Hi again. This is Dr. Amy Chai, and I'm running for United States Congress in Connecticut's 1st District. Today we're going to talk again about Psychology 101, your brain on politics. And our topic today is cognitive shortcuts. There was an ancient Chinese general, and he's credited with saying, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. Well, it turns out that modern brain science has finally caught up with the ancient Chinese general because we in our brains create something called cognitive shortcuts. And what those shortcuts are is input into our brains that's familiar to us, and that may be cultural, or it may be something that our mother always said to us, or more sinister, it could be sloganeering that we hear from a politician, or lies that we hear from the mainstream media, which are repeated over and over and over again until they become true in our minds. And as we saw last time when we talked about cognitive biases, we realized that once these ideas are planted firmly enough in our minds, it's almost impossible for logic and facts to remove them from there. So politicians find that this is an incredibly useful tool for creative a narrative that people are going to believe and are not going to disbelieve, no matter how many facts to the contrary are given to them. This is very common in propaganda, like they used to have in communist China or in Russia. And we're seeing that same sort of sloganeering going on today. And these slogans, repeated often enough, become true in our minds. And then they're almost impossible to dislodge. And we hear them over and over again. And it's kind of interesting. One of these things was the Very Fine People hoax, where President Trump said that people on both sides in Charlottesville at the riot were very fine people. And in the next breath, he said, except for those neo-Nazis who are terrible, horrible people, and I completely disavow them. But what the media did was they cut the second half off, and they only showed the first half that said there are very fine people on both sides. And then they created a narrative that Trump was saying that neo-Nazis were very fine people, which is completely the opposite of what he was saying. He was saying there are fine people on both sides of an argument about historical statues. And it took a few years for Snopes and for PolitiFact and all the fact checkers online to finally admit that that was false information. But we see this on TV all the time, and this is why people are starting to call it fake news. Because in the era of more flexible information, we can kind of know pretty rapidly if original footage was edited to create a false narrative. But the cognitive shortcuts are there, and you'll hear them every single day. So think to yourself, what cognitive shortcuts am I using? Unfortunately, you might not be able to tell. But if there is something that you hear over and over and over again, and it becomes something that everybody knows and everybody says, they may even chant it or say it at the same time, that is almost certainly a semi-truth or a lie that has become true because of cognitive shortcuts. So If you hear yourself repeating a slogan, take time to stop and think, what does this slogan mean? Is it really true? Maybe it would be a good idea to talk about somebody who disagrees with this slogan and listen to them with empathy and with care so that we can create unity instead of reactionary politics based on brain science. So please like, follow, and share, and we'll have more to talk.